Good evening, all. You're locked into another episode of the Red Sea podcast with the Red Sea full-time show. Liverpool Leicester at the King Power. We have gone down 1-0 in an abysmal performance from the Reds this evening. I cannot sit here and say that there are any real major talking points from a Reds perspective as to how we played the game. Today's football was absolutely shocking. It is the worst display that I've seen from this Liverpool team in a long, long time. But we're going to get into it. We'll dissect all the moments just after this intro.
Tell the world we are Liverpool, champions of England.
We've conquered all of Europe. We're never gonna stop. From Palestine to Turkey, we've won the fucking lot. Got Paisley and the Shankly, the fields of Anfield gold. We are unsupported, and we come from Liverpool.
We're locked into another episode of Red Sea Full Time, and we have got PK, the main man, here with us from our Red Sea team down under, and we've got the Southern Scouts, the SS, here with us as well. We had to bring PK in just to balance things out a little bit because I'm sure you guys, the viewers, can understand that I am absolutely raging. That 90 minutes of football is one of the worst I've seen in a long time from this Liverpool team. So much so, I've never been in a position where I've decided that I wanted to go on a rampage in my house and start throwing things. It was bad. Really, really bad. I mean, we're going to get straight into what scraps that we've got to talk about because there are no real meat there, just bones, because that's all that our strikers today kind of fed off. And I want to start with Jota. The reason why I want to start with Jota is because SS and I discussed this yesterday and we spoke about the selection of Bobby or Jota. And SS, you made some really, really good points about the form that Jota's in. It would be difficult to drop him or rotate him as we spoke, because I don't think Liverpool are in a position where they're ever dropping players now. It's a rotation game. But I'm going to be very frank and very honest. This evening, Jota was shit. Let's be very clear about this. He was shit. And he didn't offer any movement to occupy that Leicester back four. And it was a makeshift back four. You know, if we contrast it against how we played against them in the cup coming off the bench, and I did say this during our preview show, I like Jota coming off the bench because he's one of those players that you don't want to see running at you for 90 minutes or for 40 minutes. You don't want to see him running at you. And today he just didn't offer anything for me. He just didn't do anything. He was static. The movement was poor. He looked disinterested. There was one moment where the ball was up in the air in the last, I think, 10 minutes of the game, and Milner had to kind of bark after him and say, "Look, get after the ball, lad. What are you doing?" It's like he didn't want to be there. And that for me is just compels my frustrations with this performance this evening. Like, I can't sit here and think of anybody this evening that I could remotely single out for any praise. Maybe
Matip, maybe.
Or maybe Matip, or maybe even Trent, just. But it wasn't a vintage Trent performance, so I kind of have to think maybe not. I mean, like, where does, like, I'm absolutely, my blood is boiling. I'm trying to control myself. Where does your standpoint, SS, on the Jota performance? Because I know you're a huge fan, as am I. I'm a huge fan. But today just makes me think that the reason why Bobby is the person that he is and what he means to his Liverpool team is because of what, like, performances like this. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because I'm all for singling players out when they've played badly. You know, I have some favourite players, some I don't. You know, I slander Keita when he deserves it, and rightly so. You have to slate your favourite players as well. And Jota was poor tonight, but I don't think it was just him. I think the whole front three were poor. Salah's missed penalty was bad. The run up was so obvious where it was going. Schmeichel had already dived by the time he kicked the ball. You know, bearing in mind we had 5 goals against him in a penalty shootout last week, and Salah didn't take any. For me, could Jota have potentially taken that one? And the Mane chance in the second half, which, you know, the one time Jota did do that kind of Bobby movement that you referred to, you know, even when he's creating those chances, those two weren't at it. And, you know, Salah for me wasn't very good against Tottenham. He wasn't very good today. And I think there was a comment in there, Mane now no goals, no assists for 8 or 9 games, which starts to make me look a little bit more right from what I said last season when he was on that shocking run of form last season. Started this season really well, Mane, with some goals, but he's gone back to that kind of dry, you know, drought again. And you think, well, you know, realistically, other than one player, 3 of those 4 have to play. And if 2 of them are having a stinker, you know, at least one of them are going to start the next game. So we touched on it, didn't we, a little bit, that we could do with a little bit more competition up there. But in terms of Jota and your question, yeah, I still would have started him. I don't think it would have been fair to drop him or rotate him based on his performances. And I don't think Bobby is quite up to the level of form that we'd expect to see him start to come in from the beginning of a game just yet over Jota, who is a second top goal scorer in the league. But yeah, he wasn't great today. He didn't pick up the kind of positions we're used to seeing him, you know, score headers for a short guy and create chances and be a real terror and a threat. And like you say, that, you know, that Leicester back line of Marty and Ndidi, neither of which I don't even know they've ever even played together. It was similar to Liverpool's centre-back partnership the last time we were at the King Power. It kind of switched around with injuries and availability. But yeah, I would have liked to have seen Jota really play up against those two, really threaten them. And, you know, you saw that when Salah got in against them, you know, indeed he did that ridiculous challenge to give away the pen when Amati was right in front of him. So they're not natural centre halves. They're not used to those positions. But yeah, we just, like you said, there's not too much to talk about from Liverpool creative chances. Yes, we had a lot of chances, a lot of shots, but it was just so wasteful. And yeah, it felt like a really missed opportunity tonight.
I totally agree with you. And I think it's a good point, a good opportunity to bring PK into the conversation. Just on the Jota and Mane topic, I look at the spaces which Jota was occupying, and he was almost playing not wide, but I'm sure you'll probably be able to provide more of a technical term for this, PK. But he was always trying to drift in towards the left, and like if that's where you want to, if that's where you want to play, just play there. Do you know what I mean? Like, bring Bobby on, play there. I just do you know what I mean? It was just frustrating because there was nothing to occupy, and that's what I was saying to you guys in the chat. There was nothing to occupy that Leicester back 4. There was no problems posed for them.
But I felt that, you know, if he's going to drift wide and maybe, you know, try and do this double up thing with Mane, then maybe Salah should have just rolled in more central too, because there was this huge space, and obviously the midfield that started Ox for me, he should have been one a bit more further forward. He wasn't as advanced as we've seen him in the past because he's been in good form. You know, prior to this game, I think he's been in decent enough form to kind of say we can get him forward, taking shots, run into the box, whatever it's been. But we saw nothing of any of that from him. And then Henderson, for example, trying to do what Thiago does on a training ground with the side volleys and clearly shank every single one of them in terms of being our creative kind of attempt on goals. I think the word is just disjointed. The whole game today was disjointed from start to finish, whether it's Jota moving to the left, whether it's Mane not be able to control a ball, whether it's Salah. Look, I think Salah's the only player we should give leeway to anything. So because of Salah, what he's done this year for us so far, Salah can play bad for the next 5 games and still have enough in the tank as lives. You know, in the Crash Bandicoot, there's enough lives to keep going. So I think Salah for us is you know, completely out of this conversation. And as much, I know the penalty was terrible, perfect height, not even an angle, whatever it was. I just think he's out of this conversation. But everybody else, I think a few people need to sit some time on the bench, which I'm sure we're going to get onto now.
So let's get into it, because again, we were briefly discussing this in the group chat, and SS, you touched on this a little bit as well. Sadio Mane. So Sadio Mane cut a very different figure last season. It was a very tough season for him, and I was defending him staunchly. I was saying no. it's because of the balance of the team. Robbo, the this, the that, the midfield. There were so many reasons that I was trying to justify Sadio Mane's lackluster, offbeat, poor performances last season. But he flew out of the blocks this season, and we both sat like, right, he's back.
Yeah.
You know, tragedy, problem, you know, we're back in business. Mane is the Mane of old. But the stat that was put up in the chat a few moments ago, I can't find it. Whoever put that up, whack that up again. Is worrying. That's worrying for a player of Mane's caliber. Are we actually, dare I say it, witnessing the decline of Sadio Mane? Because we touched on this, and I'm sure this is going to be a figment of our Transfer Tuesday shows going forward over January. Do Liverpool look to replace Mane at some point in the not too distant future? Because Salah wants a new contract. We spoke about that as a mechanism, and we saw what happened with Ginny. He was almost sacrificed for the other players' renewals. Someone in that front three, out of Mane or Bobby, who interestingly both their contracts run out at the same time, are one of those going to be the sacrificial lamb to give Salah essentially what he wants? Because, again, I know I've been critical of Jota this evening, but Jota is second top goal scorer in the Premier League. He's playing some serious ball when he's firing. Tonight was on off night. I get it. Like, where do you sit with this? Is it time to let go of Sadio Mane or start to phase Sadio Mane out? Or is this again, I don't want to stir up hysterics and hysteria in the chat, or is this literally just a blip, or is it becoming too much of a regular occurrence for it to be called a blip?
I mean, he's a brilliant player. For me, I agree with PK. You know, again, it's that rotation, that option. Does he need a Robertson 4 or 5 games out and just say, do you know what, mate, get yourself together again? We've got options here. You know, we can do a Jota on the left, Bobby through the middle, and Salah on the right against Chelsea, even though it is their last game before they go to AFCON. And just say, do you know what, Sadio, you know, in terms of the front four, you're currently 4th in that list based on your current performances. So you drop out now. So, you know, you'll come back from AFCON. We're going to have to bring somebody in for a couple of games, if that's Minamino, if that's Ox in the front three, which hasn't been particularly successful either. But somewhere along the lines, we are going to have to start planning about, with, you know, a future. And as we mentioned, Salah, Mane and Firmino have all got 18 months left on their deal. And like we said, it is a very similar kind of situation to the midfield. You know, Wijnaldum takes the cut and everybody else gets an extra 20, 30, 40k a week from what he was potentially asking for. So, yeah, it's a big decision to make, because if we wait till the summer, Mane's just got a year left on his deal. There's not a lot of price in there for anybody. You know, no one's going to pay. You're not going to get 100 million offers like Mbappe from Madrid with 12 months on his deal. No one's going to do that for Sadio Mane in this form. So he might just end up seeing out his contract. So it's an interesting one. I would personally keep him, but I would add to the front four. I would add one more of actual proper quality, because, you know, Jota was the perfect profile, the perfect age. He's not 17, 18, 19. You know, he's in his prime. He's not quite in his late 20s yet. And, you know, you're kind of succession planning for when these guys hit 32. Jota will be 27, 28. And, you know, you've got a few years there. So I might be greedy and say I'd keep them all and add to it. But in an FSG world, maybe that isn't really a realistic option. But, you know, he's had bad runs of form. He's had good runs of form. But, you know, Mane's been here for a while. He's been here for a long, long time. So eventually he is going to dip. You know, players have different periods of their career where they are in their prime. Some of them are Michael Owen and are good as a teenager and rubbish for the rest of their career. And some players like Di Natale don't start until they're 35. So it's, you know, it could potentially be the decline of him, but I think we've almost missed the boat for the cash in of him already. So personally, I'd keep and add to it.
It's a tough one. And look, there's a couple of comments in the chat which are really, really good. I mean, big shout out to you, Damien Smart. I appreciate your comment. And again, this isn't an opportunity for us to start selling the whole squad.
Yeah, I agree with
you
that.
know, we're merely addressing now or discussing what potentially is the inevitable. We have a situation where we have two players which are heading into which next year will be the final year of their contract in Firmino and in Mane. Jota is playing some serious football. We saw the same thing with Gini Wijnaldum. His replacement passed him in the doorway. When Thiago came in, that was Gini Wijnaldum's replacement. They played a season of football together. Yeah. Are we seeing Jota as the heir apparent to Mane playing off that left side? And are we going to start to face Sadio Mane out? I don't think we're in a position where we could potentially phase Firmino out because he means too much to this squad in terms of how we play. I think we saw that this evening, and PK, I'm going to bring you in as well on this. The way that we play football, we need that false nine to create the space for those inverted wingers to actually do the damage. The two occasions in which we saw Jota make that Firmino-like movement, and I call it a Firmino-like movement because there is no other player in world football that plays false nine the way that Firmino plays false nine. We have commentators now referring to that position as the Firmino role. He has made it his own. Yeah, so we have to give the respect to what Firmino does. Bobby can't do. Jota can't or won't do it. I don't know, because he likes to run in behind. He likes to terrorize fullbacks. He likes to get after people. He likes to snap after heels. Whereas Firmino will drop in and create that space in behind for those inverted wingers to run in. So where do you stand on this whole Mane for Jota kind of situation which we're discussing now?
I'm a big believer in holding players accountable. So, if Mane's performances of late haven't been great, then stop playing him every single week. Because in his mind, it's, okay, I played bad, but I know I'm going to start next week. So if that's the case, play Jota on the left for a little bit now and run Firmino through the middle. Play it, give it a go, try it. Because at the moment, we saw, 9 games now without a goal or assist, or 8 games, whatever it is. That is a dip of form. That is something that, for example, when Firmino doesn't, score for 4 or 5 games, he gets benched. If when Robbo was playing poorly, he got benched. When Keita, was playing poorly, he gets benched. So everyone gets benched for playing poorly, except there's 1 or 2 that's for somehow they'll always just stay on and stay on and stay on, and it becomes stale. It becomes predictable, and the confidence is low because he's not scoring. And there you go. And it becomes predictable. And he tries to do too much because he wants to score to prove that he needs to start. And benching him is not a negative comment. For me,
Yes.
saying that, so I think Mane needs to be benched is not me saying he's done, he's spent, he's shit, sell him, whatever. I truly believe he needs some time off, have a look, reassess. Maybe the AFCON could be great for him. Who knows? We're talking about losing, AFCON, Salah, Mane and Keita, but losing Mane potentially could be great for him. Go away, go back home, enjoy, get a few goals in the cup, come back and be fresh. Who knows? Losing Salah is terrible, absolutely terrible news. But for Mane, it could be a good thing. And I'm trying to look at that slightly positive, even though it's not good to lose any players. But I do think he needs some time away from the starting 11. I really do.
You make some good points in there, and the AFCON could provide that respite, that kind of freedom that he's looking for. And I anchor back to what I was saying in the show last night. I think the whole Liverpool team this evening lacked momentum. That cancellation of that Leeds game, I said it last night, would affect our performance this evening. I don't think that we're a side which thrives well off extended breaks. We like to keep going. And once we get into that stride and into that rhythm, the wins start to come, the results start to come. You look at Manchester City, what are they, 9 wins or 10 wins on the bounce? That's the momentum. That's what's doing that. It's now we're in our stride, we're in our bag. Let's go. Win, 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 win. We saw it in the season in which we won, in which we finished second in that season. We finished behind City by 1 point. It was literally win, 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 win. Because the games came thick and fast. We were in our stride. That Leicester that Leeds postponement has knocked us out of our stride. Leicester played in the fixture, albeit they lost, but they had that momentum, that match sharpness, that match readiness heading into this game. No amount of training, I'm sure that you can vouch for this, PK, is going to replicate full match intensity. It's very hard to do that in training. So I feel Leicester were a step ahead of us in that respect, and we were just caught cold. And just to take the heat off Liverpool for a little while, I think Leicester played the perfect game. And I honestly think it played out, and SS, I'm going to bring you in on this, exactly how you said it would. It played out for Leicester exactly how you said it would last night. That they would sit in and they would frustrate us, and they'd make their changes and they'd go after us. And their changes were vindicated. Rodgers played the perfect game. So, I mean, where is this a flash in the pan for Leicester, or can they build on this going forward? Just to take the eye, the spotlight of Liverpool for a moment.
Yeah, I'm going to try. But I mean, Leicester played Man City 2 days ago, and then they beat Liverpool. There's no excuse. Leicester should have been at the disadvantage here. I know they've rested a few players, but a lot of them literally played 48 hours ago and got their asses handed to them. Maddison played against City. He was expected to play again from the start today. Got 70 minutes in, and I think he had a good game as well. But yeah, I just there's no way we can take the spotlight off Liverpool. Yes, Leicester did what I said they would do. I said that they would go with Inacho Vardy potentially at the front too, like with a free in midfield. They ended up going with a diamond. And like I say, they brought on Lookman, they brought on Tielemans, and they brought on Albrighton with 20, 30 minutes left to kind of really go for it. And like you say, it was vindicated, wasn't it? 3 minutes after he came on, Lookman with a bit of pace, scored a good goal. And PK did mention that it was probably poor from Hendo and Trent in the actual build up to that goal. And could Van Dijk have done more to close him down? Should Addison be beaten from that angle from his near post as well? There's nobody here tonight, like you mentioned at the beginning of the show, that's covered themselves in glory for 90 minutes. Liverpool were poor. Every single player on that pitch should be looking at himself and thinking, you know what, that's not good enough. Leicester have played 2 days ago. We've had a week off, and that week ago was our reserves beating pretty much this 11. Let's be fair. That Leicester in the Carabao Cup game were pretty much full strength because they only had about 15 players available, and our youth team / a few backup brigade players came on and made the difference in that game. And today you got Van Dijk back, Fabinho back. We were missing Robertson, but other than that, and Thiago missing again, which is a whole nother thing. It's pretty much full strength, and we were shocking. So no, I don't think. I think Leicester did what they had to do. I think they rested Vardy for City, brought him in today. He wasn't really that effective. They made their subs at the right time. They're not too bad attacking wise, but to allow them to get a clean sheet in the form that they've been in, conceding goals, is unforgivable.
I know, and you look at that makeshift back four, and this is where my frustrations lie with our attacking play. And PK, you made a very good observation in our chat when we were talking in the group chat that you thought that Mo Salah was trying too hard. Did frustration set in for Mo after that missed penalty?
Yeah, obviously he wanted to repay the team. Obviously, try and not let the fans down, because Mo takes things personally. From what what you can tell, I feel like he took that miss personally, and then he tried to do everything in his power to get us back in. And you can only credit him for trying. Honest to God, that's okay. For me. Yeah, he tried to do too much. Maybe sometimes he should have passed and he didn't, whatever it was. But I think with Mo, like I said earlier in the show, he just gets all the excuses. We can make whatever we want for Mo. I think Mo's done more than enough for us to kind of say, you could do whatever you want, and we're sorry that you missed. Don't be sorry for missing. We apologize to you for now. So we don't want to miss too many. But it's look, I think Jeffrey Tsao, said something in this chat a bit earlier that I completely agree. If I can find it, in terms of Trent having more cover. I mean, if you watch the goal over again, and as we said it, Trent did the right thing by trying to press the player on the ball. And then I think you can go back to a numerous amount of games this season where Henderson hasn't covered him like he should have, and block passing lanes to the player on the wing. Because we all know when Trent goes, our right side of midfielder just comes across and covers that gap there. But he doesn't do it. And I sent you the picture and I forwarded into the group, and we'll even post it if we have to. But as much as Mane's getting the blame and some other people getting the blame, I think we've got to put the spotlight on Henderson not covering that position properly, because it led to that player getting the ball that led to the goal. And we can blame Alisson knee post. We can blame maybe Matip putting, not getting close enough or putting enough pressure on him. We can maybe the VVD should have stepped up earlier. I don't know, but it all starts from him getting the ball. So I think that's something that also needs to just to be highlighted. I think I can tell you in Brentford, it happened 2 or 3 times against the Brentford game. It happened in AC Milan game. It's happened a few times this season where Henderson hasn't been where he needs to be defensively. But, if I say that now, Jesus Christ, I'm sure I'm going to get some abuse soon. So, but, we've got to, you've got to call it as it is. We can't just say Mane missed a chance. It's his fault.
Yeah.
No, have a look at what happened, but yeah, I don't know. For me, I think that's a massive issue there.
I think the challenge is the drop in quality is not as steep as it has been. I think that the backup brigade this season, as I refer to them, has actually upped their levels. To be fair, you're seeing resurgent performances from Ox. The last couple of games that Naby's played, he's looked all right. Even though I'm not a huge Naby Keita fan, but the last couple of games he's played, he's looked all right. So those players are starting to contribute when they do come into games, but still they're not as effective all of the time as a Jordan Henderson is. So it's very hard to remove Jordan Henderson from that starting lineup, because do you play Milner from the start? It would be very difficult to play Milner. Is there a player in there that could compensate for Thiago's deficiencies? We've got to provide that balance, and we know that the most balanced midfield three that we have is Thiago, Henderson, and Fabinho. That is our most balanced midfield three. Obviously, with the exception that Harvey Elliott is out injured. I think Harvey Elliott would have been playing a lot more games than we would have thought at the start of the season. So the whole thing is balance, and also the whole thing is what personnel do we play against specific opposition? This leads us nicely on because we're going to lead into closing the show shortly. Do we think that Klopp got his selection right, so his starting lineup, and do we think that he got his changes right? The changes that he made at the different periods in the game, were they the right changes? I mean, SS, I'm going to come to you. Let's talk about the starting lineup.
Yeah.
Mane, Jota, Salah, Ox, Hendo, Fabinho, Trent, Matip, Van Dijk, Tsimikas, and then Alisson in goal.
Yeah, I mean, it was a bit of a mess, wasn't it, in midfield? And, I hate going on about the whole Gini Wijnaldum thing, but at least he was consistent. And at least he was always there. And, ever since he's left, that third midfield position has never, ever been filled, has it? It's always been bit part from Thiago, then Chamberlain's in, then Keita's in, then Milner's in, then Jones is in, then Elliott's in. Nobody has grasped that position. And the inconsistency of that position has, for me, that big Gini Wijnaldum-shaped cog, again, has reared its head. That's just my opinion. But I think in terms of the 11 he picked based on form, which I think you have to do. So I would agree with the 11 was correct. But, he's I don't know if Fabinho comes off because he might get a yellow for Chelsea. Who gives a crap? Let's win the Leicester game. If he gets suspended for Chelsea, but we win the Leicester match, deal with it. So that was a weird one for me. You end up with Milner and Keita in a midfield two with a front four, and it just became a complete mess. It was panic button. It was panic stations. I mean, if Fabinho had a knock, fair enough. But if it's to protect him for a game that we're not even playing in yet, for me, that was a really, really strange one. Chucking James Milner on in the 64th minute. I get putting Firmino on, making it a front four, but it does feel a bit desperate. And I think probably Mane should have come off. Jota should have gone left. Firmino should have gone up the top. Keep the midfield free as it was for a little bit longer, and try and get the game going. And if you have to do a Milner Henderson swap, then that's a little bit more like for like, leader for leader, and try with slightly different personnel. I get the Keita Ox sub as well. They're, we've said how many times they're head to head this season for a place in the squad next season. But Chamberlain to be brought off after 55 minutes, I don't think he's actually played a 90-minute game for us for about 3 years. And, you know, every time he kind of gets closer to, 65, 80 today. Now he's back to 55 and he probably won't play against Chelsea. So in terms of the 11, yes, I think we got it right. But in terms of the subs and the formation and tactical changes, I think it was a bit of a mess.
So Thiago being injured is a frustration. We don't know how that injury's occurred, but because muscle injuries can occur a number of different things. You know, it could be he's pulled it in a warm up. It could be because he's not played games. Players are you know, because he's been resting because of the COVID situation. He might go into a training setting and pull a muscle. We don't know the severity of it. Everything I'm reading and everything we're being told is that he could be fit for the Chelsea game. It's not. It doesn't seem as it's a huge thing. It's just a precaution as to why he didn't play this evening. But Curtis Jones was on the bench, wasn't he? And Curtis Jones has been training for a while. The only player which I see able to replace in terms of our squad what Thiago brings us at the moment is Curtis Jones. So if we're trying to replace a creative midfielder, someone who's going to be able to pass through the lines and break lines with passes, PK, again, I'm going to bring you in on this. For me, against Leicester, Jones would have been more of a natural selection as opposed to the Ox. I know that Klopp has been very complimentary of how Ox is matured in his performances, not wanting to be too gun-ho, not wanting to get forward too much, being very measured in his approach. But I feel if we're going to play the Ox, you need to let him off the leash if you're going to play him and let him be that Oxlade-Chamberlain that we know. But I think personally, Curtis Jones would have been the tool I would have used in this game to replace the Thiago factor.
But I'll try to be as quick as I can because I know you want to wrap up. But that was my problem with Curtis Jones in his last few performances before the weird eye injury. I feel like he was too caged. He wasn't as free, as expressive as we know him to be because we all know he's got that, not to use his player's name, but that Coutinho-esque factor about him where he can, you know, jink into his right and finish, or he's got great 1v1 skills and. He likes to drift into the pockets, and we know that we know that's one of his strengths. But I feel like that was one of the biggest problems in his past few performances was that he was too controlled. There was a leash on him, and it's the same with Ox in today's performances. But I think if you're I wouldn't have started Jones, to be honest, and I'm a huge fan, as we all know. I wouldn't have started him, but I would have brought him on for that lack of creativity that we needed. But I also think that, you know, if you're going to start Naby or Ox, Naby's had two really good performances off the bench to start with the past couple of performances. So why not give him the start and see how he goes, knowing that Ox is well and truly fit and able to play if he's needed to come on. So I feel like maybe he could have gone the other way, but starting 11 for me, you couldn't have got any more right, to be honest, other than maybe an Ox for Naby, worst case scenario. But the subs were weird. The nothing at second half was different to the first half. And even when he tried to do that little huddle, I remember everyone was saying on Twitter, this is the moment where the game changes. Well, nothing changed. It actually got worse again. So it got progressively worse after the second talk. And I just thought that, if anything, it was the lack of change, the lack of tactical maybe advice it could have been. And the substitutions for me were completely wrong, but not the starting 11.
Yeah, I think I agree, and I said to USS when we just before we went live, my head's hurting because I struggled to understand where the game was going. We're all football men, we all coach at various different levels, but I couldn't understand the patterns of play. My head was hurting because I was trying to, we're watching the game subjectively. I couldn't understand it. I couldn't grasp what Liverpool were trying to achieve from the way that we played. And I've never watched, I haven't watched a Liverpool game for a long time where I've sat there thinking, what the hell was that?
It reminded me of the 6 when we went to Anfield without a win. We just lost 6 in a row. We just had no idea. Any team, any quality scored a goal against us. We went 1-0 down. We were like, no idea now. We're stuck. And 19 games in, we've drawn 5, lost 2. the two times we had a chance of winning the league, one we won it, and the one where we came a point behind. You know, we were almost perfect. And they asked Klopp in his his pre-match conference just before pitch side, do you have to be perfect now? You know, you're 6 points behind City. Best case scenario, you're 3 points behind them. Then you go to Chelsea, and he's like, yeah, we knew this. You have to be perfect to get anywhere near this title. And you know, 5 draws, 2 losses in 19 games is far from it. You know, City haven't been perfect. You know, they've lost a couple, they've drawn a couple, but they've won 15. We've won 12, and we've got Chelsea away at the weekend. So, you know, I think City play a couple of times before we play them. If they win both of them and we lose to Chelsea, the title's gone. It's not far off gone already, because 6 points in half a season is a tough ask, and even winning at the Etihad doesn't do it for you. So for me, I think it's already a bit of a battle for second at the moment, which is a shame. But we're just nowhere near the levels in terms of personnel. We're not that far off, but in terms of the levels of consistency, I know there's COVID and everything else like that. But you know, when we were hitting those ridiculous runs, we're a million miles away from that at the moment.
Just quickly, if I may, just quickly, there's some familiar names in this chat now, and they're probably because they watch our show as well, and they probably know what I've said a numerous amount of times. But for every one bad game City have, we have 4 or 5 of them, and I've said that on our show many times. That's why I've never said, like, in a negative light, we're not winning the league this year, because I don't think Klopp's good enough, and I don't think so. None of that shit, because that's what normally comes up next. You know, oh, you're not a real fan, and whatever. That's fine, thank you. But it's the truth. We have too many games where it's like your Brentfords, your Brighton 2-0 up at home. The West Ham, Alisson just drops the ball in the goal 3 times. Like we have too many of those games for the one that City have. And this is why, for me, I said it from the start, even though City was 5th, and everyone's like, oh, it's Chelsea's race now. And it was never Chelsea's race.
No.
It was always City's race. And second is the new first. I sound like Arsene Wenger, but second is the new first. It's whilst they're playing. That's just how it is at the moment.
And I agree. And you kind of took the words out of my mouth in a roundabout way. I think that the only challenge that we have at the moment in this league is that City are playing in it.
Yeah,
that's it. That's the only, because our performances in a roundabout way, from what we're doing, you would expect us to win the league, but when you have a team like Manchester City, which I say repeatedly on our shows when I talk to anybody, that can just go win, 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 win. I don't know any, even the great Manchester United teams of the 90s and early 2000s, even the great Chelsea teams of the early 2000s were not capable of sustaining what Manchester City do. And when they get in their stride, it's not even like they grind results out. They just sweep teams aside. So we have to win on Sunday. Sunday is a must win. We then have to beat City as well. Yeah, it's a must win. And then not to say that we can't afford any more draws, but we have to do damage to those teams. And the only way we're going to inflict pain, suffering, and damage on those teams and punish those teams is by beating them. We have to go to Chelsea and punish them. Chelsea are in a bad way at the moment. They've just found out they've lost Ben Chilwell for a whole season. Yeah, they're in a bad place in terms of and Thiago's injured as well. They're carrying injuries, so this is a decent time to play Chelsea, because ultimately we're fully fit, providing nothing happens between now and then in terms of COVID cases, so on and so forth. We're a full bill of health.
I mean, if we win every game from now to the end of the season, we finish with 98 points, which we're not gonna win every game. So you know, you say you drop 10 points from now to the end of the season, which to be fair would be brilliant. That's 88. Is that enough to finish above Man City? I'm not sure it is.
I don't think, but again, I can't see us dropping 10 points between now and the end of the season. I can't see it. I just
more or less.
Less. I can't fathom us doing that. We haven't done it. We haven't done apart from last season, which was a freak season. If you look at our seasons prior to that, we haven't been in that way for a long time. And again, the level of the league hasn't been in that way for a long time. So I don't see that possible. I think personally, this is still going to be a very tight title race. I don't think it's going to be clear cut as City are just going to walk it, because they're yet to have the impact of COVID. They're yet to experience that impact where
Yeah, but they've got 100 million players sitting on the bench. Like
Yeah.
it's okay. They can afford to have a few.
I hear it, but at the same time, it still can be disjointed. If they lost to De Bruyne, well, De Bruyne is coming back into form. If they lost a Rodri, that could be catastrophic for like Rodri. If Rodri went out, that could be catastrophic because Fernandinho isn't the same Fernandinho he once was. They couldn't carry Fernandinho. Rodri makes it tick for them right now. Yeah. So there are key places in that pitch, and it seems wild that we're talking about COVID potentially affecting his rival. It's wild. Are we actually snatching at this to potentially? Do you know what I mean?
It's the only way that they're not going to get 95 plus points,
right,
isn't it? And no one else is getting more than they are.
I do think that there are frailties in that Manchester City team, and they will slip up at some point. I don't see them remaining perfect, although they are capable. I don't see them remaining perfect in this freak season, which we're now encountering for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I mean they'll get 104 points if they won every game, which they're not going to do. But I can see them getting mid-90s quite easily, and we won't get that. So for me, it's already gone. I think it is a second place battle between us and Chelsea. We're guaranteed third, which would be disappointment because we came third last season and we were absolutely terrible. You go into this season with Van Dijk back from the beginning, Matip back again in good form, and you expect an improvement, don't you? But with Man City being so ridiculously better and in depth than everybody else, it is. I agree with you guys. It's the best of the rest at the moment, and until we sign more players and more squad and more depth and more quality, because if we don't start spending the money that Man City do, how can we ever compete long term? We can have the odd season, but you might win one title in 5 years and City win the other 4. That's how it is.
Yeah.
I don't subscribe to that notion, because I look at that Manchester City squad. You look at Cancelo, he was hardly a household world-beating name. You look at Ruben Diaz, again, hardly a household world-beating name. You look at John Stones, again, was hardly a household. Edison was a nobody when he came there as well. Rodri was really a nobody when he came there also. De Bruyne was doing well when he came there, but again, had another gear to go into. Mahrez had just come off the back of, a title-winning season and then some decent seasons with Leicester, but again, was hardly a star. I don't subscribe to this notion that Manchester City go out and buy superstars. What Manchester City,
but they spend money.
Right. What Manchester City have had to do, is arguably overpay for players. They've had to overpay for players because at Manchester City at one point, and I still think is to some degree a hard sale. It's a hard sale for some players. So the same as Liverpool is a hard sale to a degree for some players. Yeah. Whereas if you turn around and say to someone, do you want to go to Chelsea and live in London, or do you want to go to Arsenal, live in London, or Spurs and live in London? Those teams have the attraction. I think the key thing, and do you know what? This comment here sums it up for me. System over everything. And then it just comes down to, forget the name of the player, forget the price tag of the player. It then comes down to the profile of that player. How does that profile fit our squad and our objectives? I mean, I'm not adverse to us. We've spoken, and just a quick nod to our Transfer Tuesday shows, guys. We're going to be rolling out Transfer Tuesday shows. If you haven't been involved in one of these before or seen one of these before, they go off. The Transfer Tuesday shows on the Red Sea podcast. I'm going to say it straight. They're the best out there. There are no other Liverpool channels which are rivaling our Transfer Tuesday show. So make sure you are locking into that, because we have some major guests lined up for that. But we spoke about Rafinha. We touched on Jared Bowen. We've touched on Danjuma yesterday. We've touched on Diaz at Porto. There are players, Doku got mentioned in here as well. These are hardly household name players, but they could come into our system and be devastatingly good because of the way that we play the game. I think it's the same for Manchester City with the way that Pep plays. He brings profiles of players in which are going to be devastatingly good in his system. And that's it. And we said yesterday, Klopp is Pep's kryptonite. He's probably the one manager that has got Pep's number. But the difficult thing is we only play them twice every season. We don't play them 10 times, because if we did, we'd probably win the league.
Yeah, I wish, but that's not the case. Unfortunately, we're our own biggest number as well. So Klopp's Pep's, but we're our own biggest issue. That's just how
I
it
agree.
is.
I agree. Right, guys, thank you for joining us on this full-time episode. Very subdued because Liverpool have dropped points to Leicester in the Premier League. The title race again is blown wide open and giving Manchester City what can only be potentially a clear run at first come May. Liverpool take on Chelsea on Sunday. We'll be here for your pre-match show in your Fab Four show towards the end of the week, and also for your Red Sea full time straight after that game as well, dissecting everything Liverpool-Chelsea. Hopefully, the full-time show will be a little bit more less subdued than what it is this evening. But we'll catch you on the other side of that. This has been SS. I've been Thiago's father. This has been PK from our Red Sea Down Under show as well. Thank you for joining us. Good evening.